My name is Norma Wong, and I'm one of the faculty members for Move to End Violence. You know, one of the key parts of the program is this practice that's called 60-40 stance. The 60-40 stance is a way for us to see our movement building not only from an ideological perspective, but from actual movement. So if we're going to believe something and think about it, that's different than whether or not we're going to embody it. And movements, any large social change movements, which is what's going to be required for this big task ahead of us, require us to actually deal with the hearts, the minds, and the bodies of everyone concerned, the general population, the people that we care about, and ourselves. So how do we bring about that big sense? How do we have the energy for it? How do we have the stats for it? How can we be more on the offense and not on the defense? How can we bring our awareness into it so that it's not only about our beliefs? What does our own rhythm tell us that we are capable of or not? And how do we build a more sustainable rhythm that will allow us to take on what may very well be generational work? So all of these are questions that we deal with, but more importantly, we have certain practices and certain ways in which we can actually increase our capacity as individuals, as organizations, and as a movement. So fundamental to the mind-body technology is how separate we are right now from our actual body. And so, for example, most people are not conscious of their breath. It's just that very notion. We think that breath is automatic, and in many ways it is. But our lack of consciousness around the breath means that we are unable to tell when it is that we are getting anxious, not from our mind, but from our body. So when we're anxious, we're stressed, when we are, when we can't think properly, we can guarantee that our breath is going to be high up in our chest and it's going to be very shallow. And in that state, we won't be grounded enough to take on whatever the crisis happens to be. So just returning to the breath, being able to return to that, is very strong, powerful leadership benefit if you know how to return to your breath. So that's just one example. We also use physical practice. So physical practice, for example, would include this 10-step Tai Chi form. And this 10-step Tai Chi form is intended to help everyone together return to the body, but also learn how to develop the core, what does it mean to move together, how to be aware of each other, what is rhythm like, and how important rhythm is to strategy, rhythm important to organizational work. So the lessons that are brought in this are lessons that we can translate. It is not a physical practice that's intended, for example, as exercise. So this is not about us getting up in the morning and doing our going to the gym, for example. This is not that type of physical practice. This is about the practice that would bring us into our own bodies and learn from that. Learn in ways that would inform our strategy and inform our work. The most important asset that we have in our work is ourselves. And if we think that we can just learn new things and just apply those things, become better strategists, and therefore go on the field and do better work, or become better leaders and do that, then we are coming up right up against the limits of what might be possible. So Grace Lee Boggs, the great activist, is fond of wearing a particular t-shirt, and that t-shirt is revolution with parentheses around the R. And what she's talking about is not only the fact that what revolution does is that it helps society to evolve, but in order to carry out revolution, you yourself, we ourselves, need to change. We need to understand that in order to change the world, we need to change. It requires us to do that because the job is just simply too big for us to be able to handle in our current state of being. So that whole notion of grasping that and tackling it and just embracing it, the notion that we could transform the world if we transform ourselves. So looking at our habits, questioning the purpose that we have, not only the purpose of work, but the purpose in life, dealing with the insecurities that we may be facing, coming up against the possible, not only the impossible, and doing work that is tremendously outside of the box. All of these things require us to take on our own transformation. One of the practices that we do as a cohort is called, as a short form, we call it Tai Chi, but it is not the traditional Tai Chi that has been practiced for thousands of years and that originated in China. This is a 10-step Tai Chi form that was developed by Stephen Kao. Stephen Kao is a Tai Chi master, and he's also a spiritual teacher. And he created this 10-step form as a way for the benefits of the Tai Chi to be accessible to people for whom the traditional Tai Chi is not going to be something that you're going to do. So Stephen Kao and I collaborated on the use of this 10-step Tai Chi in secular application. So in workshops, in seminars, for groups that want to improve their coordination with each other, that are trying to do problem solving together, that are literally figuring out whether they can move together or not, that are deciding how it is that they're going to move. This 10-step practice can help to teach us from a mind-body perspective, and is also a very, very useful individual practice for people who choose to do it. Let's give you an example. So the first move, would be that I would reach up and I would just bring my arms down. Oh, and I would breathe at the same time. So I take a breath and exhale. Well, anything that you do with the body will have habits. So let's say that you overextend. So for example, so that you reach up and you come all the way up. Well, as you're overextending with your body, I can guarantee you that you're also overextending in your work, you're overextending in terms of your personal life, you're overextending just last week and right now. It's that the body will do what the mind does, or say the mind will actually direct what the body does. They're hardwired together, they're connected. The good news about the connection is that when you become aware of your own overextension, that you can actually do something about it. And the place that you can do something about it the first is actually in the body. So you take a look, have your partner take a look for you, look in the mirror when you're doing that, and don't overextend. And that consciousness of not overextending will begin to influence the other parts of your life. You will know in your body when you are overextending now. Overextension will not seem like a regular course of things, that is the norm. It becomes the norm that doesn't work for you, and you begin to build a new norm. Now, overextension happens to be one of the key reasons why movements are unable to have big impact. Their energy of the movement is dissipated because everybody is overextended and therefore can only do things in small increments, take small risks, or go all out in an overextended way and then can't follow up. So one of the concepts that we begin to learn and then internalize and then practice and then question and then figure out is how we put ourselves in a situation day in, day out, that we fill it up with things to do. And in filling it up with things to do, that begins to actually narrow the scope of our own possibilities. And it narrows the scope of our possibilities because creativity requires space. When we're tired, when we're overextended, when we're doing 40 things at the same time, when whatever it is that we're doing isn't the only thing we're doing because we're thinking about what we haven't done yet, and we're thinking about the things that we did that we have to backtrack on. All of that essentially crowds out our capacity. And in crowding out our capacity, it puts us at risk. It puts us at risk in terms of our health. It puts us at risk in terms of being able to see opportunities as they arise. We certainly don't have the energy. We simply don't have the energy to take up one more thing. You know, of course, I'm talking hypothetically. I know that that's not a situation that you ever come across. It's certainly a situation I've come across, you know, in my own life, that in order to actually do bigger things, I have to make more space. And I have to make more space in my own life, in the life of my organization, in the life of my community, in the life of my movement, in order to do even bigger things. So something that can stand in the way is our guilt. And when we think of self-care as a luxury or something that we do when we are not working, then we put ourselves in a cycle. And that is a cycle in which we are in literally a drought and drown situation. Okay? So, you know, there's a method of irrigation. A farmer might irrigate his fields. And what he does is he just opens the gate and he floods the field. And then he closes the gate and all of the water dissipates. And that's what it might feel like to us. Okay? That, okay, now we're going to take time off. And so we open the gate and we flood the field. And then every other time we're starving ourselves. We're not taking the drinks that we need, literally. And when we do that, we not only put ourselves at risk, but we're working very inefficiently, extremely inefficiently, and we're crowding out the creativity in our lives. Let's take a situation that we actually do quite a bit of. So that situation is that we backtrack. We're in a tight spot and we start to backtrack. We start to literally walk backwards. We do it in a way that feels awkward. Now, one of the reasons it feels awkward is because we do not actually literally practice walking backwards. So we're all going to get into a situation where at some point the circumstances require that. But can we do it in a way in which walking backwards is going to put us into a better position, that we're going to be aware of how it is that we're doing it, that we don't feel defensive when we are forced to do that we walk backwards and we can pivot and we can turn and begin to go on the offense with whatever it is that we're doing. So here's a circumstance where there is an actual strategy around what it is that we need to do, but there's actual ways in which physical practice or physical exercises can show us how to do it in a much stronger way so that we're not caught in a corner, that we're caught off guard, that we feel defensive, all of those kinds of things, the collateral damage of being in hard work. If you have physical disabilities, then that is something that you would have a conversation with me about, and we would tailor the physical work for whatever that ability is and to work with the disability. So that 60-40 stance has been used in other settings by people who have a myriad of abilities. So you don't have to have a disability for your body to not perform the way that you would hope it to. So you might have had a sports injury in the past, or you might just be a couch potato and don't even know which is your left leg or your right leg. Okay? Or you might actually have an injury that needs to be dealt with. We've done 60-40 stance work with people who are in wheelchairs, with people who are blind, who don't have the use of one limb or the other, who are dyslexic from a physical viewpoint, where if I say, oh, please raise your left hand, they immediately raise their right hand. So all kinds of physical circumstances can be embodied. And in fact, there is so much that you can actually become able in if you become more aware of your body. One of the things I would recommend for people who want to get a picture of forward stance is if you go to the website for Forward Together. Forward Together was the first organization that used this particular technology, and it is an aspect of the 60-40 stance. What it does is it takes the mind-body work, that particular method, that approach, and it uses it mostly in an external facing manner. And what do I mean by external facing manner? It doesn't require anyone to say, okay, what kinds of changes do I need to make in order to bring about external change? It says, what kind of external changes should we go for? And therefore, how should we embody those external changes? So the individual transformation is not a prerequisite within forward stance. 60-40 stance, this is very fundamental to the 60-40 stance work, is that we essentially say to ourselves, we're doing damn good work now, but what would it take for us to really break through and do the kind of work that's going to change society as a whole? And to do that, we really have to tackle the kinds of impediments that we ourselves are putting up that don't allow us to be the great people that we can be.